So just last week, Biden's new tax proposal has resurfaced, which is the largest tax hike in the history with the price tag of $5.8 trillion of spending. The tax proposals will increase the federal government's tax revenue by another $2.5 trillion, which would mean the highest tax rate amongst all developed world. On the surface, the proposal is marketed as a tax for only the rich, dubbed as the billionaire tax. But if you look closer and deeper into the 1,000-plus pages of the documents laying out the proposal, you find proposals that just screams the Great Reset agenda. So what exactly is inside the proposal that advances the Great Reset agenda, and how do they limit the freedoms and the liberties that you and I have? So let's dive right in. First thing first, the proposal includes the original Build Back Better plan that Biden and the Congress already tried to pass. The Build Back Better proposal had a price tag of $3.5 trillion, and many of the lawmakers backed away from supporting it for the fear of printing more money. One notable mention is Senator Joe Manchin, who didn't go along with his Democrat colleagues. And we all knew that Build Back Better was nothing but a shell for the Great Reset agenda. And as if the $3.5 trillion wasn't enough, the new proposal has a price tag of $5.8 trillion. You know, it's as if they're thinking, $3.5 trillion? Pfft, those are rookie numbers. We gotta pump those numbers up to get the Congress to actually change their minds.
I gotta pump those numbers up. Those are rookie numbers in this racket.
So they're really serious about not backing down. Not to mention, the Federal Reserve balance sheet is sitting at $8 trillion, which is an amount that we have never seen before. And the latest inflation report says that we're at 40-year high with the key Fed inflation rate. And just hear what Biden had to say about this, and I quote, "Critically, my budget would also keep our nation on a sound fiscal course. It fights inflation and helps families deal with rising costs by growing our economy." Wait, did he just say that it's gonna fight inflation by printing more money? Now, friends, is it entirely possible that this is just political pandering and gambit to draw more support for a particular party as we draw near midterm elections? Absolutely. But we can't ignore the fact that many of the proposals are perfectly in line with the Great Reset agenda, and time will only tell if any version of this will get passed eventually. So now that I've set the stage, how exactly is this connected to the Great Reset? Well, we have to understand the intent of how the Great Resetters plan to use taxations and spendings in general. Now, when it comes to taxation, the Great Resetters love to use this tool to often punish and discourage any industry that isn't going to follow their commands. So, for example, the oil industry has been under great scrutiny from the Great Resetters for a long period of time to encourage more green energy adoption. And I'm not necessarily against green energy if it actually works, but pay attention to how the Great Resetters like Joe Biden are using taxation and who it's being directed at. And I'll share some more examples in just one sec. And on the flip side, the Great Resetters love to print and spend more money on things that do align with their causes, often which are money that just go to large corporations that are aligned with their agenda as well. So think of subsidies that are going to green energy, education curriculums, and certain social justice issues. So with that in mind, let's get into some practical examples inside of the proposal. One of the main agenda for the Great Reset is to consolidate the world's entire wealth and redistribute them to social causes that they favor. That means they have to start punishing the people who has any kind of wealth. That includes you and me. So this is any proposals that aim to increase taxes on personal, corporate, and investment income. A prime example of this is to increase the taxes on capital gains and dividends from 20% to 39.6%, which is starting to look a lot like a tax on ordinary income. Now, capital gains taxes is when you sell an asset that you hold on to for more than a year. So let's say you go and buy a piece of stock for, say, $10, and a year later, its price increases to $30. Now what you have is an unrealized gain of $20. Now, if you choose to sell, you will now have a tax on that $20 of realized gain income. Now, the reason why it's called a realized gain is because you'll quickly realize just how screwed you are by the government. I'm just kidding. Maybe. Now, this is a direct attack on individuals that make good decisions to invest for the long term and stifling any private ownership of assets. Just remember, the Great Reset, folks, wants you to own nothing and be happy. So what a fantastic way to do it by taking some of your wealth by taxing it. The next proposal is the increase in corporate tax rates from 21% to 28%. Now, don't make the mistake of thinking that this is somehow a move against the Great Reset. It's not because, well, sure, taxes on all C corporations, whether you're a Great Resetter or not, are going up. But think about how the Great Resetters are planning to spend the tax dollars in the first place. So they're planning to increase taxes on all corporations on one hand, but what's to say that they won't give subsidies and tax credits to corporations that do line up with their agenda, which ultimately means that Great Reset corporations get to pay less taxes or at least have their taxes compensated by the subsidies. And of course, for those corporations that don't align themselves with the elites, well, they're pretty much out of luck. A great example of this is that the proposal seeks to devote $11 billion to help other nations transition to cleaner energy. Let me say that again. The proposal seeks to devote $11 billion to help other nations transition to cleaner energy. What that really means is that a chunk of your tax dollar is going to corporate contracts, and a few select people are getting bonuses and getting richer and falling in love with the Great Reset. Another $17 billion would go to climate research, including $9 billion for clean energy research, development, and demonstration, according to Politico. Now, all that just means is that your tax dollars is going to some company that is aligned with the Great Reset agenda. Maybe you and I should start our own green energy research project company and get some of that money. But then again, that would make us one of them Great Resetters. And here's probably the biggest blow against private ownership and individual American enterprise. And that's a proposed tax on unrealized capital gains of high net worth individuals and potentially just ordinary individuals in the future. What this means is that you pay taxes on an asset that grows in value, but you haven't even sold yet. So just imagine you start a business today and it grows into a very successful company in a few years, worth millions of dollars. Now, you have no plans to sell the business, but here comes the government knocking on the door, demanding that you fork over a percentage of what your company is worth as taxes you pay on the unrealized gains. Now, if you don't have the money to pay for it, that would just simply mean that you'd be forced to sell a piece of your company to pay for this silly tax. And each time you sell, you're losing more and more ownership of the business you spend energy and time building, only to lose it to the government. Oh, and that's on top of the federal income tax, state income tax, FICA, Social Security that you already pay for. And here comes the hotline from Anger Management Center, in case you need it. Now, the good news is taxing unrealized capital gains will most likely face an uphill battle, as many commentaries are pointing out that it's likely unconstitutional. Now, just as I mentioned, friends, this proposal may just be a political tool to swing votes to one side of the aisle, and it's possible that none of the proposals would actually see a light of day as actual law. But you and I must stay vigilant about these types of proposals as we continue to ward off any threats to our liberty, freedom, and our choices of what we want to do with our money, not the government. Practically, the entire proposal is about taxing a whole lot of money and spending it on the Great Reset initiatives. But there is one terrible weapon that the Great Resetters are putting together that can completely shift the momentum in their favor. This weapon can potentially wipe out any freedom and choices that we have with our finances. So if you want to see us pull the curtains back, click on this video right here to continue this video. The more you're aware, the more we can fight back.